All right, we are live. Welcome to the coverage for the Miami Grand Prix. We have qualifying starting in 13 minutes now, and lots to look forward to. Quite a lot of action around this circuit so far we've had in the practice sessions, and a lot more to be expected over qualifying and the race. We've had three practice sessions as per usual. No sprint weekend this weekend, and the drivers have been modifying, tweaking their setups, bringing some upgrades, and we've had quite a few upgrades actually this weekend. Mercedes have brought some upgrades, Ferrari as well. We've only had a week's break between Baku and Miami. We've basically gone halfway across the world, and Ferrari have decided to fly out a couple of new floor components to, well, obviously make their car go faster, and by the looks of it, their car has improved in terms of pace. They according to the simulation data, at least, they have closed the gap slightly to Red Bull, but we're still yet to see what is the case and where they will put themselves in qualifying and race conditions, and so Ferrari got some upgrades, Mercedes have a couple of upgrades here and there, and it won't be long until we find out which do those upgrades work. Have the drivers and the teams put themselves up in terms of performance? Thank you everyone for tuning in. We've got nearly 100 people, just over 100 people in fact, tuning into the stream. Very much do appreciate all your support. If you haven't hit the like button, that would very much be appreciated, because it just really helps out the stream in the algorithm, like especially if you do it right at the start of the stream. That would be fantastic. Hello Passion Games, and Arshad Malik and Richard Dreesen. I think I've said that right, probably not though. Good evening from Holland. Yes, good evening to you guys. It is it's nearly 9 p.m. now here in the UK. So a bit of late evening race compared to the usual afternoon races that we do typically get, at least here in the UK. And yeah, all right. I shall just modify the chat box so it's a little bit more readable. Just give me a second, guys. I think the text is slightly too small for you guys to actually read. So let me just fix that. Alright, there we go. That should make it a little bit more readable. Okie dokes, 10 minutes now until qualifying starts. We've had a couple of exciting practice sessions, lots of incidents, lots of braking, lots of locking up that we've seen from the drivers, and the track has been resurfaced since last year. So we've had a completely new sort of circuit conditions. The track has to be rubbered in entirely from the get-go. And we've had Charles Leclerc with a little bit of an incident in FP2 yesterday. But yes, all of the track resurfacing has made this circuit a lot more exciting, and this is going to make this weekend as well much more, and especially this qualifying session, much more on edge. Lots of places where drivers can make mistakes, go wrong, and hit the barriers. We are at a part street circuit at least, and yeah, lots of barriers everywhere, very close to the walls. Of course, the drivers at most parts of the circuit, and we're seeing a lot of mistakes here and there. So we'll see how the drivers fare. But now 9 minutes till qualifying begins. Hello, David, and Herman, Pierre, and Robert. Thank you all for tuning in. And yeah, all right. So let's have a quick little summary of what's happened so far. In the FP1 sessions, we had Lewis Hamilton and George Russell in first and second position. I think a couple of people may have seen that result and be like, Mercedes are back on top. They brought a couple of upgrades. Here they are. But if you did watch the session, I was watching it live, And what happened was that the other drivers, like Verstappen and Leclerc, they set their lap times. They set their fastest lap times on the soft tires with 15 minutes left on the clock at the end of the session. 15 minutes left, whereas Mercedes went out right at the end when track conditions improved to their absolute best, and then they set their lap at that point in time. So track conditions definitely did help out Mercedes, and that is why they were top of FP1 and FP2. So that's the reasoning there. And then we, of course, had FP2. Oh, no, sorry, they were just top of FP1. And then in FP2, we just had the drivers go out. They were doing their quali simulations mainly because FP2 was at the same time as quali is today. So that's why the teams were doing the most of their quali simulations. And we gathered some data out of that. And Ferraris looked to be a tenth slower than the Red Bulls. Now, looking at the pace in FP3, the Ferraris were pretty significantly behind the Red Bulls, not just a tenth or so. So we'll see how that goes. Maybe if Ferrari's upgrades really come into their own over like one lap pace and they can really attack. But yeah, not ideal. Not ideal situation by the looks of it for Ferraris. They're still quite a ways off Red Bull, and we'll just have to see how that goes for them. How do you feel that it is technically Logan Sargent's home race? Well, Logan Sargent, in fact, I think it is. He was actually born very close to Miami, so it's very, very close to his home race, and I think it's great, really. He'll definitely have a lot of American fans supporting him, and it's great. It adds that little bit of pressure, of course, that you want to perform at your home race with your home fans there. And a couple of drivers have said like it gives them that little bit of extra boost to try and like push on and make the best out of the weekend. So maybe that'll help Logan Sargent out. He did have a very unfortunate weekend last week in Baku. He had a great qualifying sessions in both quali, sprint quali, and the actual qualifying session. But the Williams car was quick over one lap pace and quite horrible in terms of race pace. So he ended up starting up in the points and then just falling further back and ended up not scoring any points. So we'll see if he can do anything this weekend. Potentially maybe get it through into Q2, maybe even Q3, depending on how the rest of the cars fare up and down the grid. But yeah, the Williams is very slippery in a straight line, and their top speeds are matching the Red Bulls by the looks of it. Of course, through the corners they are slightly slower, but down the straights the Williams are fairly quick. All right, hello from Arkansas, USA again. Yeah, only a few states over from Florida. It's 10 p.m. in Germany. Alonso's going to be in top 4. I think that's a definite possibility. I mean, it really depends on where Ferrari are, because I think it's pretty much guaranteed that the two Red Bulls are going to be in the top 4, and then it's a question of how far behind is Sainz compared to Leclerc. We've usually seen that Leclerc is faster than Sainz, and Sainz maybe a tenth, 2 tenths behind, and it just depends how big that gap is, and can Fernando Alonso slip his Aston Martin into the gap in between. But, I mean, the thing is, Aston Martin, they had a very good start of the season, and then Baku, they slightly dropped off a little bit. They weren't where they wanted to be. Of course, they had that DRS issue where DRS wasn't opening for them properly, so that hindered them in qualifying. And of course, if you have start in a bad position in quali, then you probably end up in a bad position in the race as well. So we'll see what Aston Martin can do, but they have completely rectified their DRS issue. They obviously solved it. I think they must have put on a different rear wing as well. They have a different spec rear wing for Baku, because Baku has got so many long straights. They usually have the rear wing that they have for Spa fitted at Baku. So yeah, they have a slightly different rear wing, and that should probably have no issues whatsoever opening and closing the DRS flap. All right, we've got 4,000 people watching. Thank you, everyone, for tuning in. Do appreciate your support. Absolutely fantastic, really. If you are enjoying, hit the like button. But yeah, we are now 4 minutes away from qualifying starting. We'll have Q1, Q2, Q3 as usual, 18, 15, and 12 minutes. And yeah, with the usual 5 or so minute break in between each one. All right. So, also, I would just like to comment on Alfa Romeo. So, Alfa Romeo, they had a brilliant. Well, they were pretty competitive last season, and this season they have slightly dropped off the pace. They have always been maybe getting knocked out in Q1, maybe just scraping through Q1, knocked out in Q2, and their performance really hasn't been up to par. Now, if we look at the 2021 Constructors Championship, I think, no, not 2021, sorry, 2022. In fact, I'll just bring it up now. 2022 Constructors Championship, we saw um, Alfa Romeo score 55 points in the championship, and out of those 55, 39 of those points were scored in the first 8 races of the season. So Alfa Romeo started out 2022 with the new regulations on like absolutely brilliant. They had so much performance relative to everyone else. They were fantastic, and then since the second half of 2022, they have just been on the back foot, going backwards and backwards, not being able to find any performance. And, well, at least they may have found performance, but not at the rate that everyone else is finding performance. Everyone else is improving. And maybe Alfa Romeo are just falling behind. And now I think I know why that is the case. It's probably because, well, the Alfa Romeo was the only car that was at the weight limit was at the weight limit of the regulations last year. So last year we had, of course, all the new regulations were put in place, and all the teams were overweight on the weight limit. Like that's why we saw so much carbon fiber, and the teams like getting rid of paint to make the car as light as possible. And the only team that wasn't struggling with that was Alfa Romeo, and now all of the other teams have got their weight limit back all the way like to the regulation limit. So Alfa Romeo don't have the advantage that they did have before, and they have now just fell further back compared to everyone else. But yeah, that's my little like hypothesis on Alfa Romeo and why they are not doing that great. But right, let's get into qualifying. So here we are at Miami. We have 19 turns on this circuit, 5.4 kilometers, and 3 DRS zones. Two of those DRS zones have been shortened, like we had shortened DRS zones at Baku as well. Now that turned out not to do so well. Like the overtaking at Baku just wasn't great, to be honest. And I guess what we're going to see here is maybe a little bit more of the same. Now, of course, the FIA did do their simulations, and they predicted that if we reduce the DRS zone by this many meters, then we're still going to have overtaking. But it didn't work out in Baku, so maybe it'll work out here, maybe not. But the issue is that they can't just switch off they can't just change the DRS zone on the fly. They can't be like, okay, overtaking isn't happening, we're just gonna move the DRS zone. All of this stuff gets decided maybe like 3 months in advance. They have to install all the sensors at the correct locations, install the backup sensors, and then have all the wires running up to the F1 timing loop and everything. So it's a whole big process, and they don't have the facilities to change it in the span of 1 week. They found out in Baku overtaking wasn't great because of their modified DRS zone. So we could be in for another week of less overtakes, but yeah, I guess we'll just have to see, really. I think it's a little bit too early in the weekend to call if we're going to have overtaking or not, but we'll just have to see. But here we are now, 6 seconds remaining. We'll have the green light at the end of the pit lane very, very shortly, and the drivers will get going. All right, we have a green light at the end of the pit lane. The clock will start ticking down, and we will be qualifying. Hello, C-Paul. Nice to see that you are back. Evening. All right, here we go. Then the drivers start coming out onto track. We've got Alex Albon, first driver to come out onto the circuit. That's a bit weird. His GPS might be slight. Oh, there we go. Guan Yu Zhou out onto the track. And so is Valtteri Bottas. All right. So another thing is, okay, so the circuit has been completely the circuit has been completely resurfaced, and they have completely new asphalt here, and that has caused a little bit of an issue between the drivers. Really, they've been struggling for grip, mainly because, well, I don't know if how many of you guys know how the actual, like, how asphalt works, but mainly it's just a whole bunch of rocks, and that's been tied together. They've been like kind of stuck together, glued together by this like oily layer of, I think it's called bitumen. And effectively, what happens is, once you have a resurfaced track, there are a bunch of holes in between the rocks and the bitumen. Well, there are a bunch of holes between the rocks that get filled up by the bitumen, but the bitumen isn't the most sticky part of the track. The rocks are. So there is still quite a lot of bitumen at the top layer of the circuit, and when the drivers drive over this like new layer, they lack the amount of grip that they've got. The more driving that they do, of course, the less bitumen there is, and it kind of gets worn down a little bit, and then they start getting more and more grip. But the circuit has been going through major amounts of track evolution. Like, we've seen drivers improve like 0.4 of a second in the space of like 15 minutes of track evolution. So it is going to be very key, even after 3 full practice sessions of all 20 drivers driving around doing at least 20-25 laps or so. We're definitely going to see track evolution still play a pretty critical role in today's qualifying session, and we'll see the drivers just, well, trying to go as late as possible, the team sending out the drivers as late as possible to try and get the most optimal track conditions. And we'll see how that goes. Maybe we'll get a bit of a traffic jam at the end of the pit lane. Maybe we will get we'll get a very big queue, maybe at turn number 17, turn number 18, 19. But it is, we're not sure just as yet what will happen. Of course, we've seen a couple of situations like this where the teams try to go as late as possible, for example, at Monza. But here we are. The drivers and the teams are going to do their best not to get in each other's way and screw over everyone's qualifying laps. And here we go then. We have a couple of drivers on flying laps. We've got Guan Yu Zhou, Valtteri Bottas, Yuki Tsunoda. But fastest driver so far in the first sector is K-Mag. Now we have Lando Norris crossing the first sector line. He goes quicker. And then we have Nico Hülkenberg coming up behind him as well. All right. So drivers just making their way around. I haven't actually given you a little, like a rundown of this circuit, really. So I might as well do that. So here we go. Verstappen, in fact, starting a flying lap, goes through turn number 1, 2, and 3. They're all just a nice sequence of corners. You've got to, if you make a little bit of a mistake in turn number 1, that really compromises your turn number 2 and 3. And yeah, it's basically, you've got to get a very good flow through those corners to get to go quick, basically. And we've seen Verstappen. Most drivers have been able to manage that, but if you do go slightly offline, you lose a significant amount of grip, of course. And then we've seen drivers end up having to bail out of laps after a small little mistake at turn number 2. And then there they go through turn number 2 to turn number 3, 4, and those corners, turn number 4 to 5, 6, 7, 8, all of those corners, the drivers are very much on the limit of those tires. They're turning, braking, accelerating all at the same time, trying to get the maximum, the minimum possible lap time, of course, maximum possible speed through those corners. And it is very, very tricky. We've seen loads of lockups, and especially on the curb. So on the entry into turn number 8, turn number 7/8 kind of, on the entry on that curb, if you touch this curb even a tiny little bit, your car just completely snaps out. There's nothing you can do about it. Once you are on the limit of grip, that curb is all you need to send you into a spin, lose control. We saw Charles Leclerc do that, get on a curb a little bit and then straight into a barrier. So yeah, that part of the circuit, just the end of the first sector, start of the second sector, very, very tricky to manage. But then they make their way through turn number 8, and then they kind of go through turn number 9, 10. They're all very very straightforward corners. They're just tiny little kinks in the road, to be honest. And then they get through into turn number 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, they're all very slow speed corners, and we know Ferrari are good in the slow speed. They were very quick in Australia and in Baku in the slow speed corners. So this should be where Ferrari excel. And yeah, they're very, very tight and twisty, and the walls are very, very close to you as well, especially turn number 14 and 15. The curbs are like, they're massive, so you do not want to be driving over the curbs. We've seen so many drivers just cut the corner completely because they didn't want to drive over the curb, because you can risk damaging your car, your suspension, basically anything, when you drive over those curbs. So yeah, turn number 14, 15, killer curbs, and then you've just got another long straight with a DRS zone, and coming into turn number 17, so many drivers have been locking up at that point in time, at that corner, and they have just been, yeah, we've seen a couple of mistakes there, and the thing is that the tailwind as well, we've had tailwind, headwind, crosswind, and it's just not been ideal for the drivers, and that's why they've been locking up to 17, and then 18 and 19 just flat out making their way to the start-finish line. Yeah. All right. Thomas Lord has just asked, shouldn't you be revising for exams, mate? Well, in fact, I have been revising basically all day. I was at the library, and then I came back just in time for FP3 to watch that. But apart from that, I've been working, revising for my exams. So yeah, it's really fun, you know, like wake up, do some revision, and then stream F1. So seems all right. Okie dokie. So here we are now, 11 minutes left on the clock. All of the drivers except for Sainz, Alonso, and in fact, Sainz just sets his lap now. We've only got Alonso and Stroll left to set a lap, but everyone else has set their lap times. We have Sergio Perez top of the timings, going a 10th ahead of Verstappen, and Leclerc puts himself up 2 milliseconds ahead of Max Verstappen. So it is, good job there from Leclerc, and maybe we are seeing Ferrari are kind of close to Red Bull, and that would be brilliant to see in qualifying. So there we are. Is revision like studying? Yeah, revision's exactly like studying, just doing past papers basically, for my modules at university. That's about it. All right. So now we have Alonso and Stroll coming towards the line. They have 2 green sectors. Alonso puts himself up into 4th place. So Arshad Malik, you predicted Alonso would be in the top 4. So here he is in after Q1. After the first runs of Q1, he is in 4th position. Lance Stroll down in 11th position for Lance Stroll. Not great. He is how far behind his team? It's half a second behind Fernando Alonso. Now we know Fernando Alonso is good, but half a second gap is not ideal for Stroll, and we're just gonna have to see how he can. Well, if he can claw that back. But this is what I'm saying. Track evolution is very, very key. Kevin Magnussen has just put himself up into 5th position. Now, I know K-Mag has had a couple of good qualifying sessions, but yeah, I do not think that Haas car is the 5th fastest car on the grid. So we're going to say that track evolution is still happening, and we've had 9 minutes of qualifying, and we've had drivers up. We've had K-Mag up in 5th place, so track evolution still yet to go, and we'll see what happens there. What happened to Lewis Hamilton? He's down in 20th position, I think. Maybe he aborted his lap. Let's see. In his final sector, I think he had a very bad final sector. I think he might have locked up going into the final corner, and that's what happened there. I'm not 100% sure. I haven't seen the onboard, in fact, of Lewis Hamilton. Or maybe he got a lap time deleted. That might be it. I will just confirm for you. But it seems to be both Russell and Hamilton are down there, so a little bit strange. Maybe they were just they set their laps right at the start. All right, but we have got Russell and Hamilton out onto the circuit now, so we'll see what they do and if they can improve on their lap time. In fact, Russell, there we go, purple first sector from George Russell, quicker than Sergio Perez as well. So let's just follow Russell along his lap. He opens second DRS zone of the circuit. Now through into turn number 11. Very, very late on the brakes there for George Russell. Braking as late as possible. Hits that apex very, very nicely. Now through into turn number 12. just keeping it very, very close to the apex. And now through turn number 14 and 15, very tricky. And he has made it through there, not had any sort of issue with the curbs. Also, I would just like to confirm, Lewis Hamilton, he had traffic on his lap, so that is why he is down in 20th position. He had traffic, and it was an incident between K-Mag and Hamilton, so K-Mag may be getting a penalty. We're still yet to see, but the stewards are currently under investigation. And now here comes George Russell out of the final corner, crosses the line, and in 8th position for George Russell after a brilliant first sector. He was purple in the first sector, and then set a not ideal middle sector, slightly slower. Well, not slightly slower, he was half a second slower in the middle sector for George Russell, so that's not great for him. And then he was half a second slower than Leclerc in the final sector as well. So yeah, George Russell very quick through the first sector, but maybe his tyres overheated a little bit too much, because it is very hot here in Miami. We had 46-degree track temperature earlier in the day. I think it might have cooled down a little bit. In fact, just give me 1 second, guys. I will check what track temperature is. It is track temperature is 43 degrees Celsius. So yeah, extremely hot. And if you do push a little bit too hard, maybe in the earlier sectors, then your tires can overheat by the time you get to the end of the lap, and then it's basically game over. You can't go any quicker. But we have had now the second runs of the drivers. We've had Max Verstappen on a used set of tyres. Well, in fact, everyone is currently on a used set of tyres who have set a second lap time. We've had Verstappen now 3.5 seconds ahead of Perez in first position. We've got Perez in second, and then Leclerc in third, Sainz in fourth, and Alonso in fifth. Stroll crosses the line, puts himself up into sixth, 2 tenths behind his teammate. So yeah, that's about what we expect from Stroll. 2 tenths behind Fernando Alonso seems about right. So must have made a mistake on his earlier lap, and now he is up to pace. The thing with that is that Alonso set his earlier lap with worse track conditions, so that's not exactly a fair comparison. But here is Stroll. He is 2 tenths behind Fernando Alonso, so it should be all right for the time being. With 5 minutes left on the clock, currently in the elimination zone, we do have Alex Albon, Yuki Tsunoda, Lando Norris, Nick de Vries, and Lewis Hamilton. Both Alphas, in fact, are out of the elimination zone. Hamilton crosses the line only up into 10th place. The Mercedes, we thought they were going to be very, very quick this weekend. But here they are in 10th and 11th place. In FP1, they are up in first and second. By the looks of it, even in FP2 yesterday, when they were doing the quali simulations, we saw that they were still fairly quick. But now here they are, in 10th and 11th place. Alright, Guan Yu Zhou got blocked by a Ferrari, nearly running him into the wall. So, yeah, Ferrari not doing the greatest job of communicating to their drivers over the radio. And this is a real issue here. Traffic in when drivers are on hot laps, because we do have... because there are walls everywhere and all the corners are blind. If you do make a little bit... if your team doesn't communicate properly, you could end up just blocking someone and you wouldn't have any sort of idea whatsoever. So yeah, not great for the Ferrari mechanics, engineers not communicating the incident. And now that is also under investigation after the session between Kevin Magnussen and Lewis Hamilton. That incident earlier that Lewis Hamilton caused him to get his lap blocked, that'll be investigated after the session, and I presume the same thing will happen between Zhou and the Ferrari. So there we are. How many drivers are eliminated for the next? There'll be 5 drivers eliminated in this session. So the bottom 5, and in Q2 as well, the next 5 will be eliminated. So that is how it will work. We'll have, it'll just be the typical. Well, we'll see actually. Maybe. Well, thing is, McLaren, they brought a whole bunch of upgrades to Baku. They started performing well. They were up in the points, and they were doing great really. But now here they are in 18th and 19th place, and they're not even on track. So I don't know exactly what's happening down there at McLaren. Maybe they are waiting for the latest opportunity possible. And well, in fact, here comes Lando Norris out of the pit lane. Now we've got 3 minutes left on the clock, so we'll do one slow out lap, and then set a quali lap right at the death of Q1. But that's what it looks to be. The McLaren's going out right at the end of the session to get the most optimal conditions possible. Also, I would just like to point out Nico Hulkenberg up in 4th position. Of course, track evolution has played a role here, but Hulkenberg and Magnussen both been setting brilliant quali laps over the course of this session, and maybe we could see them get through into Q3. Maybe it really depends. But yeah, Hulkenberg has been doing brilliant here. I think he's outqualified Kevin Magnussen now 3 races to 1, sorry. So yeah, it's looking good for Nico Hulkenberg in terms of the qualifying stats. And also, would you like to point out George Russell as well, out-qualifying Lewis Hamilton 3 out of 4 times this season. And Lewis Hamilton beating George Russell in the race 3 out of 4 times in the season. So George Russell still very much Mr. Saturday, performing very well on Saturdays in qualifying, and we'll see what he can do. Also, we'd just like to point out here at the end of the circuit, there is such a massive traffic jam. We've just got all of the drivers just queuing up, going so slowly through this section. And it's 2 minutes now left in the session, but everyone just queued up. I can't imagine any of these drivers having hot tire temperatures whatsoever. But maybe that's a strategy, because if your tires are going to overheat by the end of the lap, maybe if you go into the start of the lap with cold tires, by the end of the lap you just have normal temperature tires instead of overheated tires. All right. Can you have updates on what's going on with Mercedes? To be honest, I'm not particularly sure what's going on with Mercedes. They looked quick much earlier in the sessions, but here they are. They did set their laps on old tyres, so that is another thing to consider, that they were on old tyres. But now this is where it really comes to. 1 minute left on the clock. All of the drivers starting their flying laps, and yeah, this is what it all comes down to. If Mercedes still aren't up in the top 10 after this, then maybe there'll be questions to be asked. But yeah, for now, let them set their final quali laps of Q1. Also, look at this. K-Mag now up into 5th place now after, and then we have Nico Hulkenberg 6th. The Haas is doing brilliant. But all right then, here we go. So we have got 25 seconds left on the clock. Logan Sargent starting his... Oh no, Logan Sargent just crossing the line now, up into 13th place. Can he make it out of Q1 for his home weekend? Well, it's still very much borderline. Of course, he's got Lewis Hamilton, George Russell, Oscar Piastri, Lando Norris, all of them behind him. Those 4 drivers who should be making that out of Q1. So we'll just have to see how that works out for them. We've got 1 second left on the clock. Lando Norris just crosses the line now, up into 11th place, 1 second behind Max Verstappen, the leader, but Norris up into 11th. That should be pretty safe for him, but we're still yet to see. Lance Stroll crosses the line, still in 13th place for him. He's up into 14th place. Logan Sargent currently on the elimination zone. We've got Zhou now crosses the line up into 9th place. Next up, Nico Hulkenberg in 6th. He improves. Nick de Vries crosses the line. He's up into 12th place. Ocon into 7th. Bottas into 6th, and the elimination zone still stands. We've got Hamilton, Russell and Piastri all in the elimination zone. Here comes Piastri. He's in 16th, unfortunately, so he is knocked out. And now we have got Pierre Gasly crosses the line. He stays in 9th position. Here comes George Russell up into 10th place for him. And now we've got Lewis Hamilton coming across the start-finish line. Where does he go? He goes up into 6th place for Lewis Hamilton. So currently the elimination zone is Lando Norris, Yuki Tsunoda, Lance Stroll, Oscar Piastri and Logan Sargent. And by the looks of it, that is it. Logan Sargent does not have the opportunity to set another lap. And unfortunately, at his home Grand Prix, he qualifies in 20th position. So not good whatsoever. That's very unfortunate. But would just like to point out, K-Mag still up in 5th position after everyone setting their qualifying laps, everyone improving right at the end. We've had K-Mag still up in 5th position. Very nice job indeed from him. Lewis as well setting a great lap on those fresh tyres up into 6th place. Sorry. And George Russell is in 11th. Very, very interesting. All right. So that has been Q1 for you guys. Everyone now just coming back into the pit lane. We've got 2,000 people watching. Thank you everyone for tuning in. If you are enjoying the stream, be sure to hit the like button. And yeah. All right. Okie dokie. So that has been Q1. We have, of course, the two McLarens been eliminated. Unfortunately, even after they brought upgrades a couple of weeks ago to well, obviously make their car faster, and it ended up, it worked for them as well. They did have a significantly faster car, but here they are, eliminated out of Q1, very unfortunately. All right, okie dokie. So here we go then. Yeah, Aston Martin as well, not doing so great. We got Alonso in 12th position. Stroll been eliminated. Now, I don't know if that comes down to the question of did they set their lap at a late enough point, but I think it's fair to say that Aston Martin, they started off the season great, but it's kind of been going slightly downhill there. Of course, it's not been like straight, they've just fell off a cliff, but they are slowly, by the looks of it, rolling downhill, and maybe going back to a little bit more of a reasonable level, and staying maybe fourth fastest car. They might be competing still for the third fastest car, but it's definitely not without a fight, and it could be very, very variable. Whereas, like, we could see Aston Martin third fastest car one weekend, next weekend it's Mercedes, next weekend it could be next weekend it could be Ferrari and Aston Martin a second, but yeah, it's definitely not as clear cut as we would have thought by the first couple of races of the season. Aston Martin, their performance is still a lot more information is needed to find out exactly where they are. All right. So yeah, Q2 will be starting very, very shortly now. Let's just put that up on the screen. There we go, Q2. Yeah, I guess, let me know what your predictions are of who you think will be eliminated out of Q2. But I would say, I think it's safe to say that maybe Guan Yu Zhou will be eliminated. He's not done so great. And probably Alex Albon as well. I mean, Alex Albon has had some brilliant performances making it through into Q3 by like the absolute, just by putting the perfect lap in at the correct point in time. But yeah, I don't think that can happen every single weekend. He did have quite a good qualifying in Baku, and I think he will get eliminated in Q2 now. And then maybe, I think De Vries as well, with Sargent eliminated. It doesn't look like there's that much hope for him. The AlphaTauri, they did bring a couple of upgrades last weekend, but it hasn't been anything major. They haven't like suddenly just rocketed themselves up the field, and yeah. At this point, do the cars have minimum fuel weight during each qualifying session? Well, it really depends. We saw at the start of Q1, we saw some teams send their drivers out with 2 laps worth of fuel. Well, not just 2 laps. Of course, an out lap, a hot lap, like a cool down lap, another hot lap, and then an in lap. They sent them out with enough fuel for all of that, for 2 hot laps basically. But yeah, I think once you get through into Q2, most of the drivers will be just most of the teams will just send the drivers out with just enough lap for one hot lap, sorry, and that should be enough really. What happened to Logan Sargent? Well, Logan Sargent was in fact the first driver to cross the line, so he did have technically the worst track conditions for when he set his lap. So, well, that definitely didn't help him out. And Oscar Piastri it wasn't great really from him. He was only a 10th behind his teammate, but the McLaren car just not that quick. In fact, I forgot to point this out, but in the in the bottom five, the gap between 16th and 20th was only 0.2 of a second. So it was very, very close. It was very touch and go, and who got through into Q2 and who didn't. It was all, very, very close. And yeah, a little mistake here and there, and you can get screwed over. So that's about it. All right. So Q2 has started. Drivers just coming out onto the grid. We've got Russell on a used set of tyres. Guan Yu Zhou as well on a used set of soft tyres. A bit strange that they're sending Zhou out on a set of used soft tyres. I suspect they would have had some spares, but apparently not. So here they are on a used set. We've also got both Hasses as well out on a used set of tyres. I guess they might as well just conserve them, set a first initial banker lap on those on a used set, and then go for a proper push lap on a fresh set. I guess why they're doing it is because they think they're going to make it through into Q3. Because, of course, once you do go into Q3, you want to do 2 runs in Q3 with fresh sets of tyres. Now, Pirelli does give you 1 extra set of tyres for making it through into the top 10. But then, of course, you do need 1 extra set. So they might be doing a little bit of tyre conservation here. They're going to conserve 1 set of tyres and try and get through into Q3 on just 1 proper flying run. Alrighty. So here we go then. We do have Lewis Hamilton starting a flying lap. So here he goes into turn number 1, braking very, very late, hits that apex, and now just, dances that car through corners, turn number 2 and 3. Now he's foot flat to the floor, going through turn number 4, dab of the brakes, flick the car in, and now just balancing, braking, accelerating through turn number 5 into turn number 6. Braking here is so tricky. Do not want to touch that curb, and Lewis Hamilton does not go onto the curb, makes it through just very, very safely. With the narrowest of margins, to be fair, driving that car up to the limit, but no further than it. And now through into the DRS zone at turn number 11. Here he goes, approaching around 200 miles an hour, hits the brakes into 11, and yeah, makes that apex very nicely into 12 now. And yeah, now here he is into turn number 14 and 15, very, very close, hits the apex at turn number 14 a bit aggressively, but avoids the curb on turn number 15, and then makes it through onto the start-finish straight now. Oh no, sorry, not the back straight. DRS activated once again. The driver's approaching 200 and something miles an hour, depending on their car. Hamilton approaching 203 miles an hour, hits the brakes into turn number 17, does not lock up, and then through out the final 2 corners, just flat out. And now here he comes across the line. He does, and it is a 1:28.3 for Lewis Hamilton. All right, that puts him in 5th position, 1.2 seconds behind Max Verstappen. And also, look at this. So we've got Verstappen in 1st place, Perez 2/10 behind him, Fernando Alonso 4/10 behind Max Verstappen. And then we got Nico Hülkenberg ahead of both Mercedes. I mean, Nico Hülkenberg and Kevin Magnussen, brilliant job from both drivers. They're somehow ahead of both Mercs. Yeah, just fantastic job from the Haas team. Of course, it is like maybe that it's their home race as well. Of course, that we do have 3 races in the USA, so I guess it would be their home race for all of them. But yeah, here is Haas, and here they are in 4th and 5th position for one of their 3 home races, which is fantastic. Yeah. All right, Sainz and Leclerc now out on out laps. They'll be setting their lap shortly. Nick de Vries as well is on a... Oh, Nick de Vries is on a flying lap now. I think the Ferrari should get out of the way in time. And yeah, it seems to be all right. Haas is very much on party mode. Yes, that is true. And yeah. All right. Where is Ferrari? Ferrari, well, they're down in 12th and 13th place for now, but that's because they haven't set a lap yet. And yeah. Yeah, maybe Leclerc can score a podium. I think, well, by the looks of it, he's going to have to challenge Fernando Alonso for this podium, because Alonso has been matching, well, not matching the Red Bulls, but he's been pretty close to the Red Bulls and around about where the Ferraris typically are. So I wouldn't put it far past Fernando Alonso to be challenging Charles Leclerc and Sainz for a podium position. As well, yeah. I mean, Sainz as well has been struggling. Hasn't been able to match Leclerc. In Australia, was a couple of was 4 tenths behind, maybe. Baku 6 tenths behind. So he's really gonna have to pick up his pace here, and we'll just have to see what he can do. But Leclerc starts a flying lap. Carlos Sainz does the exact same right behind him. And now we have Gasly, Ocon, Albon, and Bottas yet to set a flying lap. All right. Yeah, in fact, Bottas is the only driver that hasn't come out of the pits yet in Q2. I guess he's just he's only going to do one run and try and make it through. Bit of a strange strategy, really, because Alfa Romeo haven't been that competitive, so you might as well send him out. But Alfa Romeo can do what Alfa Romeo want to do. Can I stream the live footage of the race? Unfortunately not. I would get copyrighted by Sky Sports, so that is why I cannot stream the actual race. Alright. Yeah, Ferrari on an out lap. I mean, Sainz, look at this. Purple through the first sector. 2 tenths ahead of Charles Leclerc in the first sector. Brilliant job from him. Let's see what. So Leclerc goes 33.2 in the middle sector. Carlos Sainz 33.1 in the middle sector. So as I said, Carlos Sainz needs to pick up his game. Here he does exactly that. Gets a little bit of a toe off Nick de Vries as well coming down the back straight. That's going to help him out. And potentially we could see Carlos Sainz ahead of Charles Leclerc after these runs in quali. So here comes Charles Leclerc out of turn number 18 and 19. Crosses the line up into 4th position behind Fernando Alonso, a 1:27.5. Sainz crosses the line only 40 milliseconds behind Max Verstappen. Sainz is up into 2nd place, Leclerc down in 5th, and the gap between the two Ferrari drivers is 4 tenths now. So it was 4 tenths in Australia with Leclerc being faster. Now it's 4 tenths in Miami, but this time Sainz is faster. Brilliant job there from Carlos Sainz. I mean, even the simulations weren't predicting Ferrari to be this close. So Carlos Sainz definitely done a fantastic job there with that lap, and has just been managing to go, well, extract all of the performance out of that Ferrari. Is very much pushing it to the limit. And yeah, Leclerc has not been able to keep up. All right. What happened to Stroll in Q1? I think Stroll must have just had a bad final lap, really, because everyone did improve on their final lap. But of course, if you make a bit of a mistake here, you don't improve as much. And Leclerc is down. Stroll. That's why I think he got knocked out. But it wasn't by like a significant margin. He was only half a tenth slower than Norris, who was like on the edge of the elimination zone. So it wasn't like a big mistake or anything, or the Aston Martin suddenly slow now. It's just that, yeah, he made a little mistake, and that's what happened. All right. Has anything crazy happened? Well, I'd say Carlos Sainz nearly matching Max Verstappen's pace, and going 4 tenths quicker than Leclerc. I said that's pretty crazy. The two Hasses as well at one point were up in 4th and 5th place. That is also pretty crazy. But yeah, I guess that's what's happened so far. Are we expecting major upgrades from Aston? When? To be fair, I don't know. I haven't actually heard any sort of timeline from Aston Martin of when they're bringing upgrades. Um, so yeah, I mean, usually we are now at round number 5 of the season, so that's typically when you expect upgrades. Round number 5, round number 6 of the season, where you start getting some properly big upgrades. So we have Miami this weekend, and then we have a week's break, and then we go racing in Italy for for Imola, and that should be. I guess we might see some upgrades at that point in time. Imola. Oh yeah, the other thing is the teams also have quite a lot of data for Imola to like compare to, that we've raced there a couple of times now, whereas Miami's a fairly new circuit. So, and of course it's a street circuit as well, so not the most ideal conditions to be testing out new parts. So I guess they might have planned something for Imola. That's usually when we see upgrade packages, but I haven't heard much. All right. 3 minutes and 50 seconds left on the clock now. And yeah. Also, I would just like to point out Sergio Perez very much pushing his car to the absolute limits. He clipped the wall on the start, on the entry to turn number 4. So yeah, I mean, the drivers, of course, you can clip a wall. We saw this in Baku. We've seen it in Singapore. You can touch the wall very, very slightly and get away with it. And yeah, the drivers taking absolute liberty to try and get as much performance as they can out of the car. Yeah, usually we get the big upgrade packages at Spain, and Spain's usually around the 6th race on the circuit. 6th race on the calendar, but it's been switched around a little bit, and it's at round number 8 this year. So yeah, Spain maybe. I mean, in fact, I can just look it up probably. Aston F1 upgrades. Oh, in fact, Aston Martin brought some upgrades in Baku, and in fact they've brought some this weekend as well. I haven't actually heard about this. I know Ferrari brought some upgrades, and they brought some pretty big floor upgrades. But let's see. Ferrari have got upgrades, and Aston Martin. Oh, all they've got is a little bit of a. Oh, it's not really much of an upgrade, to be honest. They've just got a little bit of cooling on their bodywork. Yeah, Aston Martin haven't really brought any upgrades. They did have upgrades for Baku, so I guess they've already had their little bit of an upgrade package. But yeah, anyway, let's get back to qualifying. We've got 2 minutes left of the session. All drivers are out on the field. We've got all 15 of the drivers that made it through into Q2 out on the track. Everyone except for Alex Albon, Sainz, Perez, Leclerc and Verstappen are on fresh sets of tyres. Everyone else is... Oh no, those drivers are on old tyres, sorry. So Albon, Verstappen, Sainz, Perez and Leclerc, they're on old tyres. Everyone else is on fresh sets, trying to do the fastest lap possible. And we can see there's a very, very big queue forming now at turn number 17, and the drivers just trying to set the lap as late as possible. We've got Alex Albon, by the looks of it, trying to set his lap right at the end. He's going to be going last in the queue if he can make it around in time, of course. We've got 1 minute left on the clock. Kevin Magnussen leads the way. Behind him is Max Verstappen, then Alonso, then Hülkenberg. And Ocon and Leclerc are a bit close. They could see a little bit of dirty air going on there. And we've got Nick de Vries. Oh, Leclerc's actually backed out of his lap. Leclerc did his lap earlier and has just gone purple and just goes a tenth and a half ahead of Max Verstappen. Apologies for that little mistake there. Yeah, brilliant lap there from Leclerc. He's now going to be traffic for everyone else, so he's got to watches mirrors. But now we do have 25 seconds left on the clock. Everyone has started their final flying lap, and here comes now Kevin Magnussen, first driver to cross the line, comes out of the final corner, turn number 17, 18, and number 19 now. Here he comes up into 7th position for K-Mag, up into the top 10 for now. Here is Max Verstappen, improves in the first sector, improves in the second and third sector, goes a 10th and a half now faster than Leclerc. So previously Leclerc was a 10th and a half faster, now Verstappen a 10th and a half faster. Alonso purple in the third sector and up into third place, 3/10 behind Max Verstappen. It very much looks like we could see a Fernando Alonso podium here, but not if Sainz and Perez continue to improve. All right, Esteban Ocon crosses line up into 6th position, pushing Nico Hülkenberg into the elimination zone. We've got De Vries crosses the line now. He stays in 15th position, unfortunately. Russell into 9th. Hamilton into 13th. Hamilton crosses the line, does not improve, stays in 13th position. He is out of Q2, is Lewis Hamilton. Pierre Gasly on the edge of the elimination zone, goes from 11th up into 8th position. Valtteri Bottas, who comes into the pits, he's in 7th position. We got Leclerc into the pits. Sergio Perez, purple third sector from him, goes 1 millisecond faster in the final sector than Fernando Alonso, and he stays in 5th position. But that has been Q2, guys. Surprise elimination. We have got Lewis Hamilton being eliminated out of Q2. Wow. Yeah, in fact, we've got in front of both Mercedes cars, we've got a Haas car. We've got in front of George Russell, we've got K-Mag, and in front of Lewis Hamilton, we've got Nico Hülkenberg. So, yeah, Mercedes their pace has just disappeared. They were the third fastest car. They were maybe competing against Aston Martin. Just nowhere to be seen whatsoever. So, yeah, not great. All right. So all the drivers now coming back into the pits. Will be 5 minutes now till Q3 begins. Oh, in fact, not. 5 minutes till Q3 begins. Did Alfa Romeo bring any major upgrades? By the looks of it, no. Alfa Romeo, they have. I don't know if you were here for the start of the stream, but basically what happened was Alfa Romeo, they scored 55 points in the Constructors' Championship at the start in 2022. This is, of course, we had last year with the new regulations brought in. And out of those 55 points, they scored 40 of them, or 39 of them, in the first 8 races of the season. And then since then, they've just been going downhill. At the start of the new regulations, they got them right, and they seem to be pretty good, pretty quick, very consistently. And they have just been dropping off ever since. And I think the reason for that is the Alfa Romeo was the only car that was at the weight limit. There's a limit, there's a minimum weight that you can have. And all of the other teams in the new regulations, they were like, okay, they built out their cars and it was slightly too high in terms of weight, whereas Alfa Romeo was exactly on the limit. So they were quicker because of their lower weight in their car, of course. But now, as the teams have done their development, they have found ways to reduce the amount of weight in the car. We're now seeing Alfa Romeo just fall further and further back, and it's just, not great. All right. Also, C. Paul, thank you for the donation. Very much do appreciate your constant support for the channel. It's been, fantastic, really. We've seen very much do appreciate you sticking around. K-Mag into Q3, that is fantastic. Out-qualifying Nico Hülkenberg, so now it's 3-2 for the Haas. For the Haas drivers, it's 3 to Hülkenberg, 2 to Kevin Magnussen. There we go. All right. Well, I guess I can make a vote for pole position. So who is going to get pole position? Are we going to have who is pole? Are we going to have Max Verstappen? I'd say Verstappen is a pretty solid bet, but of course we do have Leclerc, who's been performing pretty well. Like, it's not, he hasn't been that far behind. And then Carlos Sainz as well. He's definitely an option because, well, we saw that lap earlier from him. He absolutely destroyed Leclerc over the course of that lap. Or is it going to be Sergio Perez and pull one out of the bag? Because, well, it is very much a street circuit, and we've had Sergio Perez win 5 out of his 6 race wins. 5 of them have come at street circuits. So yeah, maybe we could see Sergio Perez come through. He hasn't been that great so far. He was only top of, I think, the first runs of Q1. He was faster than Verstappen, but ever since then, Verstappen's just been going faster and faster. But let's see what you guys think. So we've got 60% of you think Verstappen's going to get pole, 20% think Leclerc, and 11% think Perez, and 6% think Sainz. I guess we'll just have to see, really. Yeah. All right. So the drivers that have been eliminated out of Q2, we've had Albon, Hulkenberg, Hamilton, Zhou, and De Vries be eliminated out of Q2. So we have, in the top 10, we have the 2 Red Bulls, the 2 Ferraris, both Alpines as well. Then Fernando Alonso, Valtteri Bottas, Kevin Magnussen, and George Russell. So we've got 3 teams with both cars, and then 4 teams with 1 car into the top 10. Okie dokie. Also, guys, if you are enjoying the stream, be sure to hit the like button. It really does help out the channel. And if you are, I will also be commentating for tomorrow's race as well. So if you are interested, well, I suspect if you're watching qualifying, you probably also want to watch the race as well, or listen to the commentary. So yeah, if you're interested in listening to my commentary again, then be sure to hit the subscribe button. All right. Yeah, Chris, the F1 Gamer is the best F1 channel on YouTube. Well, I very much appreciate that compliment. I don't think I am. I'd probably like to say, maybe the official F1 channel. That's probably slightly better. But yeah, shout out to Chris and Shane from the UK. Very, very cool, very cool. All right, P1 Charles Leclerc, P2 Sainz, P3 Verstappen. Well, Alex Lilo Italia. I think it's safe to say you're a Ferrari fan. I don't know how likely that is with Leclerc in first and Sainz in second. But anything can happen. Anything can happen. Verstappen could have a issue in his final lap, get blocked by traffic in both his first and second runs, and then who knows? Who knows? Okie dokie then. 12 minutes. We have 12 minutes for Q3, and we will be getting going, well, very, very shortly. In fact, right now, Q3 has just begun. We've got a green flag at the end of the pit lane. No drivers have come out just as of yet. But yeah, the time is ticking down, and as expected, the teams will be trying to go as late as possible. All right. Oh, here we go. Verstappen, first driver out of the pits. Then Perez, and then Alonso. Everyone now just making their way out. Verstappen was first to bite the bullet. And everyone else coming out onto the circuit. Okie dokes. Everyone out on a fresh set of softs as well. For their first runs of Q3, everyone coming out on fresh sets of tyres. Yeah, and I suspect they'll be doing another fresh set right at the end as well. Okie dokes. Alrighty. So here we go then. We'll have Verstappen just coming out. All the drivers, in fact. The track temperature has slightly dropped. So it was 46 degrees. Now it is down to 44 degrees. And of course, yeah, that's going to help a little bit in terms of like how the pace improves over the course of the session. But yeah, the drivers, that I think the main issue that they're struggling with right now is the fact that they have overheating tires, and how that's kind of affecting them really, because if you do go into a qualifying lap and you have overheated tires, by the time you get to the third sector, you just have no way to drive quickly whatsoever. So it's a bit, it's a bit of a balancing act. Going through the first sector, that's where you have the high speed corners as well, so it's very tricky, because if you push too hard in the first sector, of course you can get a purple first sector, but then you've kind of screwed your lap for the remainder, because your tires are too hot to do anything. So what is the temperature for Miami tomorrow? To be honest, I'm not sure what the temperature is for Miami, but I don't think that has too big of an impact. It's more of if there is cloud cover or not, because if there are clouds, then that kind of blocks the sun out a little bit and the track doesn't get as hot. But of course, if there are no clouds, then the sun basically just sets the track on fire. Not literally, just figuratively, and it gets extremely hot. And we could see maybe a two-stopper as well. With those extremely high tire temperatures, we could see a two-stopper. Also would like to point out, Sergio Perez, purple first and second sector. Max Verstappen looks like he made a mistake in the first sector and then backed out of it. But yeah, Sergio Perez, purple in the first and second sector. Leclerc, purple in the third, in fact. But yeah, we'll just have to wait and see what Perez can do. So here he comes across the line. Perez, fastest in all three sectors, a 1:26.8. All right, Esteban Ocon crosses the line 1 full second behind him. Verstappen comes into the pits. He's going to go out right at the end of the session, just put some fuel in and then just sit in the car for a little bit. Go out right at the end. But Alonso crosses the line 0.3 behind Sergio Perez. That's kind of where we've seen the Aston Martin. Sorry, they've always been maybe 0.3 behind the Red Bulls, 3.5, 0.4, and that's been fairly consistent. So now all we've got to see is what the Ferraris can do. We've got a purple middle sector for Charles Leclerc. He goes just marginally faster than Alonso in the first sector as well. So we'll see what Charles Leclerc can do. Can he put it together? Can he get close to that Red Bull? So here he comes out of turn number 18 and 19 across the start and finish line into 6th position. What happened there? A lock up into turn number 17. That's what happened for Charles Leclerc. Unfortunately, it was on a brilliant lap, locks up, loses a full second in the third sector. Wait, so if Leclerc... Oh my god, if Leclerc just didn't lock up and set the same third sector as Carlos Sainz, he would have been up in first position. Yeah, Leclerc locked up in 17, and that is him. Well, he screwed up his lap there, so that's unfortunate. But he obviously does have another opportunity to try and go slightly quicker at the end of Q3. But yeah, as of now, we have got Charles Leclerc with a lock-up in 17 and in 7th position. Again, you said the teams want to start as late as possible. Why is that? Effectively, what happens is, as the drivers drive around on this track, parts of their tyre, the rubber in their tyre, gets lodged into the track. And if you drive over rubber, it's faster. So as more and more drivers do more and more laps on the circuit, the more rubber gets deposited onto the circuit, hence making the track faster. And if you go as late as possible, that means that when you drive over and you do your lap, that bit of the circuit has the most bit of rubber possible, so you can have the most possible acceleration, braking, and all of that stuff. So effectively, that's what we're calling track evolution. Once the drivers drive over a piece of circuit, of course, like the drivers, they pit and they replace their tires every like 20 laps or so, 25 laps. That's because the actual rubber on the tire is getting worn off and deposited onto the circuit. And the more rubber that you drive over, the more grip you have, basically. So yeah. But that has been the first runs of Q3. We've got 5 minutes left on the clock, and the drivers will be just refueling now. And Verstappen, just made a little bit of a mistake, and he went wide. And the thing is, you know how I was talking about the rubber being on the circuit and you having a whole lot of grip? Well, if you go offline, nobody is driven on that part of the circuit, and because nobody's driven on that part of the circuit, there's no rubber on the circuit. And hence you lose all of that extra grip that you did have. And yeah, so Max Verstappen went slightly offline, compromised his exit of turn number 1, and then messed up turn number 2 and turn number 3, all because of just going slightly offline at turn number 1. It's not great. Well, I mean, it's not great as in terms of if you make a tiny little mistake, you can't recover from it, basically. So same thing we saw with Leclerc. He had a tiny little lockup, went deep into turn number 17, lost an entire second. And yeah. Oh, this is strange. Ferrari have sent Charles Leclerc and Carlos Sainz out with 4 minutes left on the clock. George Russell as well, coming out of the pits. We've got George Russell, Ocon. So the team's sending all of the drivers out very, very early. Maybe they're going for a double warm-up lap. That could be a strategy to try and get the entire core of the tire warmed up to the correct temperature. But usually we see the drivers get sent out a lot later in the session compared to, usually it's with 2 minutes left on the clock, not 4 minutes. But we'll just have to see. Any idea what happened to Stroll? Stroll, he what did he do? Nothing special, to be honest. It wasn't anything crazy that happened. He was half a tenth off the cutoff for 15th position, and that's why he's down in 18th. He had a bad lap. I don't know exactly where he made a mistake. I presume it would have been at a certain corner. Maybe lost the rear or something. But he was half a tenth off the cutoff for turn number for Q2, and that is why he's in 18th position. It was very, very close, in fact. The gap between Norris and Stroll was a tenth of a second. Less than a tenth of a second. So, But I guess you win some, you lose some. That's all I can really say. And we got Alonso up in second position. That is fantastic, really. Of course, Verstappen and Leclerc both yet to set a lap, so it's a bit unfair to make that comparison. But yeah, we'll wait and see what they can do now. With 2 minutes left on the clock, are Ferrari going for a proper hot lap, or are they just doing a double warm-up? We'll just have to wait and see as they go through the first sector now. In fact, what we can do is, we've got a yellow flag. Leclerc, by the looks of it, has crashed. Leclerc crashes at turn number 6. I think I was talking about this earlier, but if you go over the curb at turn number 6, you basically lose the car straight away. We saw Verstappen do it, we saw Hülkenberg do it, Leclerc did it, in fact, yesterday. And with 1 minute, with 1 minute and 30 seconds left on the clock, that might be the end of Q3, guys. You're going to have to stick with me here. Because it'll be a while till we get some information from the FIA, but we could actually see Perez get pole position, Alonso start the race in second, and then Verstappen start in 9th, Leclerc start in 7th. That would be fantastic, by the way. But a serious F in the chat for Charles Leclerc, but that could mean a very exciting race tomorrow with Kevin Magnussen starting up in 4th place. That would be a sight to behold. Alright, it's a red flag. Usually they don't restart the session because with 1 minute and 36 seconds left on the clock, the drivers are basically going to have to do a hot lap out of the pit lane if they're going to get and start another lap in that amount of time. So, yeah, it's going to be tricky now. What did the FIA do? All right. Yeah. I mean, Perez actually. Yeah. Look at this. 14% of you voted for Sergio Perez getting pole. I guess you turned out to be right. Maybe not in the way that you expected. Of course, some of you expected that. That Perez to out-qualify Verstappen, but with a red flag, it looks like that is it. Q3 will not be resumed. We have confirmation from race control. Q3 will not be resumed. We have Sergio Perez on pole position, a bit of an anticlimactic one, but nevertheless, Perez on pole on another street circuit. We have Fernando Alonso in second place. This will be absolute fireworks at the start of tomorrow's race. We got Sainz in third, Magnussen in fourth, Gasly in fifth, Russell in sixth, Leclerc, after crashing, starts in seventh position. His car looks to be all right. He's damaged, I think, the right rear suspension maybe. But yeah, unfortunate there for Charles Leclerc. Esteban Ocon in 8th place. Verstappen as well, making a mistake on his first run of Q3, and he's going to start the race down in 9th. I don't know how long it'll take for him to make his way through the field, but that's definitely going to give Perez a mega head start tomorrow. And then we have Valtteri Bottas in 10th place. But that has been qualifying here for at the Miami Grand Prix. We have Perez starting on pole, Alonso in second, Sainz in third. I don't think anyone could have called that. And yeah, Leclerc making the same mistake that he made yesterday in FP2 and has crashed into the barrier. This time crashed the rear of his car into the barrier instead of the front of his car. But nevertheless, a crash is a crash, and we see... I mean, to be fair, you can't blame Leclerc. Well, I guess you can blame Leclerc. Of course, he was the person driving the car. But at that part of the circuit, it is so tricky. You're braking. Well, you just come off the accelerator. You're transferring all of the load of the car to the front tires, trying to turn at the same time, and then you're trying to brake some more, turn some more. And if you get it even slightly wrong, if you're like 15 centimeters off and you go onto the curb, it's dust everywhere, and you're basically into the barriers. We could see maybe gearbox damage for Leclerc. I don't know how big the shunt was. I haven't seen the replay. In fact, I haven't seen the replay for some reason. They haven't shown it, but we do have, he depending on how big the shunt was, we could see a gearbox replacement for Charles Leclerc. But yeah, so that has been the stream, guys. Thank you all very much for coming along. I will be commentating for the race tomorrow, so if you enjoyed today's stream, then be sure to tune in to tomorrow's stream. That would be fantastic. And if you've enjoyed the stream, hit the like button. And when I end today's stream, it will take you over to tomorrow's stream. So just be sure to hit the click on the stream and then just press the reminder button. And if you're feeling especially fantastic, then you might as well hit the like button on tomorrow's stream as well. But that has been qualifying for you guys. It's been a pleasure commentating to you guys, and have a wonderful morning, evening, night, or afternoon, depending on where you are in the world. And I will see you in around about 24 hours. Cheers, fellas.